Hi, today I wanted to share about my diagnosis and why I decided in the moment to keep it to myself versus tell everyone about it, and how I went about deciding who I was sharing it with and how I was moving in the world, and then when I decided to basically tell everyone. So when I was diagnosed in October of 2023, it was very, life-changing, obviously, and I just was very beside myself and almost just in disbelief. One, that it was happening to me and how far along it was and just all of the things. But my first and only question that kept coming up for me, like, not only question, but it just kept coming up again and again and again: will I still be me? Like, will I recognize myself? Will I be myself? Will I know who I am? And not like in a, yes, actually in a literal sense, but this was like spiritually and like what makes me me, like me to myself and me to you. And I also realized that, like, energy, right? Like when people find out things, they treat you differently, they put and project their own isms onto you based on their own experiences, based on their beliefs. And I didn't want my experience to be hijacked or colored or manipulated by others' words, wishes, anything like that, because I'm a strong believer in energy, and words have power, energy has power. So I really only wanted to move through the world as myself and to be treated like myself. So my understanding to myself was that if I walked around the world pretending and behaving as though I always do and how normal that I am, that when I walk in the gym and everyone's like, hey, Kia, and I'm just able to have light conversations and be myself and feel normal in a world that is far from normal, right? And that would keep me vibrating high and keep me not in the like, this is happening, to me, but in a, this is happening, okay, great. And some may say I wasn't dealing with it, I was pushing through. Of course I was pushing through. Like, for me, cancer, going through it wasn't the time to like, chemo for me wasn't the time to like sit and like be with it. It was like, let me get through this, right? Because the moment you feel weak, and the moment, to me, that you feel weak and you start to feel bad for yourself, things like I said in other previously videos, you just start to spiral down, and it's very, very hard to get out of that, especially when you're going through something as toxic and as destructive as chemo. It is all those things. So I decided to keep it in my small circle: my mom, my two sisters. I told my one cousin. I told a few people at the gym, because I felt like one, I needed a spot, and I never really needed one before unless I was going super heavy. And there'd be some times where I like maybe doing 120 pound back squat, and I needed a spot because I didn't know. And I also needed people to be aware that if something did go very wrong for me, that they needed to know to call 911, and they needed to know to say, this person is, a cancer patient, and not just think that I just overexerted myself, as a normal, human being. And friend-wise, I kept it tight. There was a handful of my girlfriends who knew, and they were in the circle of trust. And I made it very clear that I needed support and I only needed positivity, and that if anyone strayed from that, they were going to be out of the circle, and maybe out of the circle forever. And it was because I needed to protect my energy. Anyone that I felt that was not authentic, that was maybe wishing me not well, or maybe enjoying, my suffering, I immediately cut off and cut out pretty much of my life forever. And you may think, oh, how could you think that some people are like that? And I'll tell you, because they are. Some people are monitoring spirits, in that they're just around to see how good or how bad you're doing, and they like it when you're doing bad because it makes them feel good. And, you know, obviously if someone that's not normal, and people that are like that shouldn't be in your life anyway. So I did that, and I really leaned into my people. You know, I had some really hard days. You know, I went to the gym every single day. My treatments were on Fridays every other day, and to the end, they were weekly on Fridays. I would go to the gym every day, with the exception of Fridays, the infusion day. Then Saturday, the next day, I would usually use to walk around the neighborhood. Sunday, I would also do some walking. Sometimes I would do the treadmill at the gym, but I was always back Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you know, and then the whole next week after, because I was feeling great, right? Because I didn't have chemo for a week in between. And, you know, I kept that. You know, I had a few very hard days where I just couldn't stop crying, and just, you know, it's a lot. It's very heavy. And I had one friend call me, and he said, "Don't let the devil win." And that struck me like to my core. And he was so right, and I'll never forget that ever. It just was very like powerful, and still is to me. Like, don't let the devil win. And, you know, from that moment, I just like pulled myself up and pulled myself together and said, okay, you know what? Moving forward, you're allowed to cry. You're allowed to have your moments. But what we're going to do, and this is a very me thing to do, I'd set a timer on my phone, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. And I said, okay, this is the time where you can scream into a pillow. You can feel bad for yourself. You can ask, why me? And all the things that are not you are, but what you need in this moment, you can do in this time. And once the timer's off, that's it. We move back on and we fucking press on, you know, and that's worked for me, you know, and I'm not implying that anyone else should do this. Everyone has to do what works for them. But, you know, for me, it was all about protecting my energy and protecting what was spoken over me. I didn't want people praying for me that I didn't like, or I didn't believe that they were going to pray for me in the way that I was hoping to be prayed for. You know, when I say I'm praying for you, I am praying for you, you know. So I wanted to only be surrounded by the light of others that I felt were on my team. Unfortunately, at that time, a lot of friends that I knew, and a lot because me was more than enough, were going through it. And I had found out that another friend was literally diagnosed around the same time and hadn't told anyone else either. And a friend made the connection. And I said, maybe it's time for me to stand up and, you know, come forward and share what I'm struggling. Because my plan was, because in my opinion, you couldn't tell I was on chemo. You couldn't tell I was sick. You could. But to me, I couldn't. When I look back at photos, you definitely could. I wanted to tell everyone after. For whatever reason, I wanted to like make the announcement when I was done chemo and be like, I had cancer. No, I didn't. I beat it. I'm done. And I don't know why. I don't know why, actually, when I sit here and think that, why did I need that energy? And I think I needed to know that I was going to get through, and I wanted to visualize myself on the other side of it. So I made that it. But once I found out that more women were being diagnosed, and not even just women, like friends, I felt like it was time to step up and say, you know, this is happening to me. I'm not around. I'm declining invitations to things because of this. If you don't see me out and I'm not reaching out, this is why. And it was, you know, the support I received was wonderful and lovely, and everyone was respectful, and I felt like it was a good thing. Yeah, it was a good thing, and I'm happy that I did it and that I shared it. Yeah, when I think back to these things, man, it's crazy. Like, I read an article or something, because I had chemo brain, so some things I don't remember. Like, there's some people I spoke to and they would share things with me, and I I have no recollection afterwards. Like a friend got promoted on NYPD to ESU, which is, you know, very prestigious. And I had to go back to text messages to reference. And they're like, yeah, I told you. And I was like, I look back, I'm like, you sure did? But I had no recollection. And, you know, chemo brain is real. And I didn't think it was until like I would realize, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not as sharp or not as, you know, me. And that freaked me out because I was like, if you know me, I am more on it than like white on rice. Like, you know, not much gets past me. And it's amazing now in the after that it's all come back, and if not even more so clear. But yeah, there were definitely times where I was just like, I don't even know that I can do my job anymore, because I couldn't understand things. I'd have to take a screenshot, send it to my sister, and to say, I don't understand this, can you help me? Which was very hard for me to ask for help. You know, I had to get a housekeeper because I just didn't have the energy to clean. Like, all I could do was make it to the gym, take 2 hours there, not because I was working out for 2 hours, because it took me, I had to sit down. It took time to get there, to do what I needed to do, and then to leave, and then I needed to rest. To ask my mom, to ask my sisters for help. You know, it was hard, but I'm happy and glad that, you know, I was able to do it, and that they were, you know, that they love me, and that they're, you know, able to be there for me. And, you know, my mom is amazing, and I'm just happy she was there and is here to hold my hand. And yeah, you know, a lot of it just really boils down to what do you need to feel secure, to feel safe, to feel strong, to feel you. And that's what you should focus on and do. Trying to think what else I might want or wanted to touch on in this video. Sometimes I take notes, so I'm gonna look at my notes really quick and see if there's anything that I'm missing. But yeah, it was more just to share, you know, why I decided to, you know, hold on to that and to protect my energy. And then so to move that into the future of, you know, protecting your energy, it's also being mindful of how you're moving through the world now. So this doesn't apply to just cancer and chemotherapy, you know, but chemo taught me like the cost of everything, the cost of every interaction, the cost of every choice, because every single thing that I didn't have a small outcome, it had a huge outcome, right? Like in life, when everything's working out your way, you might do something and it has very little effect because, you know, you just move through it. But, you know, with chemo, one little thing can put you in the hospital. You know, eat the wrong thing, like, you know, I was cutting a pomegranate and a little thing got in my finger. It was, you know, in my finger, which normally wouldn't make a big deal, but it turned into something far more than what it should have. But, you know, because of, you know, everything your body's going through. So, you know, I've just been so blessed and so thankful. And the lessons that I will continue to unravel and share on these videos is just be so protective of your energy and who you're deciding to be with and around and share your everything with, right? Because it's important. And, you know, watching the words that you say, watching the words that you allow others to speak over you. You know, in Juice is the New Tea podcast, I spoke about, I would say I rebuke that, or I don't accept that. You know, people will say things to me and I'm like, no, or I'll say received, you know, because I believe in all of that. So yeah, continue your path, protect your energy, be so aware and be so mindful. Yeah, that's all I wanted to share today.